Okay, we are good to go. So for those who are just getting into the room, this is Claire over at Calendly. So happy to have you here today. And then I am also here with my teammate Hannah, who will be answering questions in the Q&A box. And then Kayla, Director of Customer Success over at Trustfuel. Hey, Kayla. Looks like Kayla somehow got me.
I muted myself.
Here we go.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Happy to have you here today.
Okay, I thought that I had done that and I was fumbling over to see if I had broken something. So we're here today and we're going to be, as you're probably very aware, talking about how to transition your customer success department from reactive and support only oriented to proactive and profit driven. So just a quick rundown of what we're going to be going through. We'll do some quick intros so you can learn a little bit about us and some housekeeping notes. And then we'll be talking about how to measure the health of your customers and why that matters. What the biggest do's and don'ts are of segmenting your users, super hot topic right now. Why, you probably have an idea of why churn matters, but really what are the details of that and how to spot it in advance. And then Caleb compiled a great list of some good tools for both early stage teams and established teams, and then how to find awesome hires for your growing team. So we've got a lot to cover. If there's time at the end, we'll also open it up to Q&A. If not, our Twitter handles will be on a future slide, so please feel free to direct your questions to us on Twitter as well. So a bit about me, I'm Claire. I lead marketing here at Calendly. I've been with the company since it was 2 people, and we're now around 30 people. So it's grown super fast over the last couple of years. Fun fact, I lived in China actually before this, and I am now in Atlanta, Georgia, with my lovely teammate, Hannah. So Kayla, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kayla Murphy. I'm the Director of Customer Success at Trustfuel. I was actually the team's first hire, and I've been with the company for a little over a year now. So we've grown from 3 of us to about 10 now. And a fun fact about me is I can write with my toes.
Which I thought was so great.
I'm also based out of Atlanta with Claire and Hannah as well.
So somehow I duplicated the housekeeping slide. But to let everyone know, we will be sending a recording of this. So if you have to leave early, if you're not able to stay for the whole thing, please rest assured you will still get all the info. If we have time at the end, there will be a short Q&A. These are our Twitter handles. As I mentioned earlier, there's _Kayla_Murphy, and then mine is no underscores, just Claire Stollen. And then Calendly and Trustfuel are the company Twitter. So those are also great places to go for more info. So a little bit about Calendly. We're simple, beautiful scheduling, and we're a product that your customers enjoy using, as well as one that saves your team time. So basically the way it works is each of your customer success managers would get a Calendly link that basically sits on top of their calendar, allows them to control their availability, and then at the same time makes it super easy for your customers to schedule with those team members. So a customer success manager would share their Calendly link in an email or in a chat, anywhere you communicate with your users. And then your customer would click that CSM's link. They'd pick a time they want to connect and resolve an issue or run through an onboarding call, whatever it may be. And then they book. And there's no back and forth in an email thread or in a series of tickets. So that's us. Kayla, will you tell us a little bit about Trustfuel?
Yeah, absolutely. So Trustfuel is the platform for customer success teams. It was built specifically for customer success. And the goal is for teams to collaborate, build their processes, help them scale, and reduce churn as they do so. So the goal is to create those repeatable processes for customer success by managing your data, managing all your information and communications around your clients, and making you more efficient, stop wasting time jumping between platforms. And of course, you want to do all of that while maintaining an authentic relationship with that your customers value. So we always say, you guys make your customers happy, and we make software to make you happy.
And I really appreciate the inclusion of an emoji here. Thanks for that.
No problem.
So a lot of what we're going to be covering, I am going to default to Kayla because she really, as the Director of Customer Success, is the expert here. So she's going to be leading us through, assessing your customer health and where to even get started with that. So Kayla, if at any point I'm lagging on slides or if I'm going too fast on slides, just feel free to let me know. Just let me know when to move to the next slide, okay? Does that sound good?
All right. Yeah, thanks, Cara. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is assessing your customer health. And I really view this as the foundation and the basis for understanding all your relationships and what you're good, Claire. You can keep going.
Okay.
What your benchmark for customer success should be. So the data point that we're going to look at that I consider key for early stage and growth stage SaaS companies to start measuring health. And again, we're kind of looking at this from the viewpoint of people who are starting to build their process or are reevaluating their processes. So the 4 data points we're going to start off talking about are net promoter scores, product usage data, support tickets, and what I call a customer success manager gut check. How much weight you give to each of these factors is going to depend a lot on your individual organization. But we'll get into the specifics of these along the ways as we discuss further. So the first one we're going to talk about, if you want to click to the next slide, Claire, is customer health. Pro tip number 1 for you guys today, as I said, we wanted this to be a really concrete takeaway for building your customer success program. So pro tip number 1 is if you don't know a customer's health, that's an unhealthy account. The first step you should take in starting to define what different health statuses mean to you, whether it's healthy, neutral, unhealthy, red, yellow, green, however you're defining it, should be to mark down all of the accounts that you know for sure fall into those categories. And how many you can really confidently say you know the health of for sure should be a big indicator for your team about how you need to refine your processes to be proactive. The scale we're kind of looking at here is that net promoter score scale, wherein, your 0 to 6 are going to be your detractors, your 7s and 8s are passives, and the 9 to 10s are promoters. That's another great way to break it down into categories and to get a benchmark for health. But once you've got that benchmark and once you've determined which accounts are healthy and which ones are unhealthy, I highly recommend creating a 4 to 5 step outline for re-engaging the accounts, particularly whose health of the ones you don't know. A lot of customers suffer in silence. I'm sure we've all experienced this with different SaaS vendors as customers ourselves. You have a problem, a bug comes up, you're rage clicking something, and then you just abandon it because it's not working. So it's really important to re-engage, ideally, as personal as you can, phone calls, emails. Try and get them on the line to discuss their goals on a one-to-one basis. If you've got a large customer base, I know there are, companies out there just like Calendly who manage, hundreds of thousands of customers. So automate where you have to, that's totally understandable. But, bring as much authenticity to the interaction as you can, because health isn't only for, gathering feedback and managing customer sentiment. It's also important for renewal forecasting. So if you want to click to the next one, where we get a little bit deeper into that net promoter score, which is going to give you your baseline for that health status. So outside of doing that initial listing, your first step, I believe, should be to do a net promoter score. And we've had a lot of clients see success for this. If you've done one before, go back to that data, take a look at it, compare it to the data you're using now or the data you're receiving now. To break it down for people who aren't as familiar with net promoter scores, your detractors, that 0 through 6, would be considered high churn risks and people who need extra attention. 7 to 8 indicates that these passives feel okay. They aren't super excited, but they're doing fine. So great opportunity to surprise and delight people, sending them some swag, giving them a shout out on social media, maybe featuring them in a case study or something like that. And then 9s and 10s, of course, are the top of the line. They're promoters. They're people who really love your product. They're huge fans, great people to connect with marketing, wonderful people like Claire to help, manage and get people sharing their stories about their use of your product. They're also great referrals for your sales team, of course, and then wonderful relationships to have executed on as customer success managers. So beyond gathering all of this feedback and benefiting your organization in a customer-centric type of way, NPS is also a great way to predict client renewals because it gives you that baseline of sentiment. So it's understanding that people who are 9s and 10s are very happy, they're very satisfied with your product, and helping you to refocus some of your attention on those accounts which may be a higher priority. So if we move along to the next slide, we can actually see an example. Trustfuel's history is actually as a Net Promoter Score company. So this is an example from our free NPS tool of a client data who agreed to share something with us. So what they wanted to do was to capture feedback as they went through a new testing period of features. And typically anything above a 20 is considered a great NPS score for a SaaS company. Above that is fantastic. What they discovered along the way through these different cohorts was that the customers that were getting the most support, the ones that were small businesses and beta customers, the people that were the squeaky wheels, so to speak, the people that really raised their hand and asked for help, were the ones that were giving more positive scores. So it allowed them to turn around some of their processes and proactively offer the education that their customers were seeking. So that's a pretty good synopsis of NPS, which is that first data point of your health score. The next one I want to get into is product usage. And a couple of slides here. Basically, product usage's goal is to let you see patterns of customer behavior. These are a couple of my favorite tools: Full Story, Mixpanel, and Intercom. We'll get into these later, but the first step for product usage is, of course, beginning to track login data. If you don't have any of these tools in place, you may have to beg for a little bit of engineering time to pull that out of your back-end system. But I think it's going to be worth it. So once you have that data, you can tell who's using the product or not. Again, that's going to give you the insights you want to see, who needs extra attention. Beyond that, it gets more complex. You need to identify the features in your platform that indicated customers fully adopted. I would call that maturity as a metric. And that's used a lot in terms of SaaS products, but it's not often applied to customer success. And what it essentially means in this context is, how mature is the customer? How fully adopted are they? And at what point does your team consider a customer to be fully adopted? So it may surprise you to learn that what you consider fully adopted may not be what your customer is looking for in terms of full value from the product. So that's one metric I highly recommend tracking. Again, these tools are awesome. We'll get into them later. But if you don't have them, go make friends with your engineers and see if you can get some of their time. Getting into a little bit of the more complicated things that we'll save for later. Once you've got your baseline for what healthy product usage looks like, and you'll start to set thresholds. If they haven't logged in 3 days, that's unhealthy, and you'll go from there. You'll adjust along the way. But once you've got your baseline for product usage, you can start to break your customers down into segments, which we'll talk about later and get more detailed. So moving on, I guess, to our next data point is what I call the customer success gut check. And this is by far the least data point on the list. It's pretty subjective, because all I really mean by a customer success gut check is, what does your CSM think? And I guess the question, follow-up question to that would be is why should we trust that? I had a client make a really good point that said, some of our CSMs are more sensitive than others. So if a customer's grumpy on the phone because they didn't have their morning coffee, they take it personally. That's a valid concern to have. But customer success is the voice of the customer. There should really be no one internally that is having more contact with the customers. They are privy to information that other members of the organization simply aren't. Most customer success managers I know have really personal interactions. They have their customers' phone numbers. They regularly go to happy hours with the ones that are local. They see each other at events, and that personal relationship is valuable. So it's worth noting that those subtle changes, if they're skipping calls, if they're not, using the product as much, those may be things that your customer success manager is more likely to pick up on early on. And it's something we haven't quite captured with automation or science yet. So I encourage customer success teams to really take into account how the relationship manager feels it's going. And while we're on this slide, I actually want to give a quick shout out to the maker of the cartoon here. This was done by a customer success manager by the name of Luke Martin. He works for Mediafly, based out of Chicago. He is an awesome guy and an amazing cartoonist. He has a Tumblr called Success or Bust. That's got some really hilarious customer success related stuff on it. So I recommend y'all check it out. Reach out to Luke because he's really, really an awesome guy.
I noticed you actually, Kayla, included a couple of his comics like in future slides as well. And I wanted to ask where you were getting these. So that's super cool to know that this is someone who, works in the field and decided to, highlight the humor of it.
Yeah, absolutely. He's done it with other projects he's worked on before, and he's just a really talented guy. We will see more of his cartoons as we move along here, as well as many dog memes. So I guess if we want to click through to the next one, we'll get into support tickets, which is that final one. Again, just like product usage, I would set a threshold for yourself. Take the average number and then divide it into thirds so you can determine what the threshold for support tickets may be. You want to tier that 1 through 3, but be sure to keep in mind that this isn't always a clear indicator of health. Customer success managers may think that 0 support tickets is awesome and like what they're striving for, but there could be no support tickets because they aren't using the product. So again, that's where we're relying on our CSM gut check to fill in some of the blanks there in product usage to give us the data we need to determine those. So the next thing I want to talk about in relation to customer health, if we want to click through to the next one, is going to be my pro tip number 2, which is tracking your account and your contact health separately. You can have a really happy contact, but the account may still be at a big risk for churn. And it's because customer success managers are good at developing relationships with their customers. They're so good at it. And that's why they're in the field. So, like I said, they may meet up for happy hour, they may hang out. It's possible to have a great relationship with your contact, but still lose the account. Maybe your contact changes jobs, maybe their company gets acquired. For whatever reason it may be, it's important to track these separately. You can see this is an actual Trustfuel example in the screenshot here where we had an account churn because our contact left and we weren't able to get a meeting with his replacement. So, these things absolutely happen, even to the best of us. And it's important to know where relationships stand at independent levels. So now that we've gone over, the 4 components that make up customer health, I think we can get into some of the more complexities of customer segmentation, which is basically understanding different use cases to deliver a more personalized approach. So the first step in that is, have you segmented your customers? If we want to click through to the next one, it can be confusing, difficult, as confusing as this, segmented orange here, and it can leave you wondering where to start. So what I say is, if you have less than 50 customers, everyone is treated like gold. I think that's a hard line. If you have less than 50 customers, all of your customers are beautiful, magical unicorns that deserve your full love and attention. You should be getting feedback, you should be consultative, and they should know that your goal is their success. Then once you get above that, you need to start getting into where do you start segmenting, right? So I recommend basing your segmenting off of revenue. So if we want to click through the next one, things get a lot easier, a lot more easy to comprehend once we start with one spot. And revenue segmentation really is the place to begin. So your tier 1, of course, is going to be the top third of your paying accounts, i.e. the people who give you the most money. I would set your maximum threshold to your sales team's biggest deal that they hopes to close. Like, think wildest dreams. Like, the most high achieving salesperson wants to sell $1 billion a year, or whatever it may be. And then continue dividing the revenue into thirds based on the following 2 tiers. But, use your common sense. Of course, you may have to drop your maximum if you find you have no accounts in your top tier. And then, of course, you may have to use your common sense if you have a 4-tiered pricing plan. You should tier it based on that. This is really for people who have per user or per seat licensings or other different pricing models. Now, I know if we want to click through the next slide, a lot of people do not like to segment based on health or do not like to segment based on revenue, particularly in customer success, since it's such an empathetic field. I strongly recommend segmenting based on health. It puts you in reactive mode. It means you're chasing your tail. If you spend all day focusing on your red accounts, then pretty soon all of your accounts are going to be red. It takes away your time and your ability to be proactive, and it increases your risk of churn overall. So getting into churn risks, if we want to click through to reducing our customer churn.
Real quick, Kayla, I will do that. And I think you brought up something that was great that I just wanted to jump in on. So obviously, as you mentioned, this is a very empathetic field. And because CSMs are so great at building relationships, it can be very painful to, I guess, treat some customers as if they're less important. But there's a gal over at Intercom. Her name's Brooke Goodberry, and she's on the account management team there. Account management and CSM, they treat it essentially the same way.
Sure.
But she writes an amazing blog on how to create a great experience for all tiers of customers. It's just her Medium blog, but I may include that in the follow-up email that everyone gets, because she has a lot of valuable insight on how to create a great experience, even for the lowest revenue tiers, by a lot of automation and personalization without it being a bunch of just generic emails. So I think that can be achieved. It's very tricky, and it's hard to get started with when you're used to treating, like you said, all of your customers like gold. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Absolutely. I'm glad you shared that. I want to read that article. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, she's great. I'll send you her info, and I'll include it in the follow-up email all the attendees get as well.
Awesome. So we can actually click through to the next one. So we're going to talk about reducing churn. Obviously, talking about customer success as a profit-driven center, the first thought that comes to mind, of course, is reducing churn, and then renewals and upsells, contract expansions. And churn reduction is one of the primary reasons customer success came about. Subscription-based software businesses typically need 2 years to achieve ROI on a customer acquisition. So the first step to making real money is to keep those customers for 2 years, but I'm sure we all know how often a customer churns even before the 1 year mark. So the first step in measuring your churn rate is looking at how many customers you acquire each year versus how many you lose. And then once you have a specific rate for customer churn, you can start to look at factors to determine why a customer may churn. A lot of them are related to our health factors, such as product usage, NPS scores, support tickets, but you'll also want to consider company fit, like vertical and industry, team size, implementation time length, and other things like that. I think the next chart is really going to highlight how big of and I apologize, it's a transparent graph, so it's a little bit difficult to see, but if you can see the expanding lines here, the fact is that slight decreases in churn can have a big impact on revenue. So in the 2 years it takes to achieve that ROI, companies are struggling just to get to that break-even point. You can see how they accelerate as the graph goes up. But can you imagine the lifetime value of the contract that expands if you keep that customer for 5 or 10 or even 20 years? And that's where the real value of customer success comes into play. So that if you have people who are managing and capable of maintaining this revenue, then you've got what you need to continue to expand your business while maintaining low customer acquisition costs. Moving through to the next one. This is talking a little bit about customer engagement. So you can see where, customer engagement really spikes at the point of sale and, of course, at the renewal point. And we really see an increase in customer lifetime value on the next slide when customers' engagement is steady throughout, and customer success managers really have an opportunity to jump in and proactively engage and ensure that customers are receiving value. So 2 quick little tips I want to offer. One of them is going to be related to hiring that we'll get into in just a second. But this is your pro tip number 4, which is never engage without delivering value. A great tip from Mark Roberge, the former CRO of HubSpot and the one really responsible for driving their growth. He says to sales development reps, spend 10 hours a month engaging with your prospects online. I say the same thing to customer success. You should spend 10 hours, I think, is a lot. 5 hours a month engaging with your customers online. So if you work in healthcare insurance platforms, you better be up to date on healthcare insurance's latest news. Or if you sell, media buys to advertisers, you should be subscribed to Adweek. You should be engaging with your customers wherever they find wherever they find value, wherever they have conversations, so that when you don't have new features to talk about, you do have the ability to deliver value via conversation and talk shop with them. There's a great article by Siddharth Deswal, which is the screenshot why no one responds to your customer success managers. This is on Hacker Noon. It's a great article about his experience working with 2 different customer success managers and the need for them to deliver industry-based value. Speaking of which, this is something I advocate for in hiring, which is our next point. We get asked at almost every customer success roundtable we host how to recruit great hires. So I think this is a great topic to cover. The first thing I'm going to say is early on, don't worry about role experience. Customer success is growing and developing, so don't chase your tail looking for that perfect resume. What you really want is someone who's capable of learning and flexible in terms of the projects they've worked on. Claire, if you want to click through to the next slide, thank you. So CSMs sit at the nexus of many different departments, so don't settle on a distinct profile. There may be salespeople who are burnt out on the cold calling and want a new challenge, so they have that client-facing experience that you want. And there may be product managers who have technical experience and are really capable of understanding, assessing, and communicating customer needs from a product standpoint. So you're really looking for the right cocktail of hard skills and soft skills. And there isn't a perfect mixture for any one CSM. So, I would really advise companies to do a couple of things. One is to remember that, Claire, if you want to click to the next one, is that hiring and recruiting is tough and it's expensive. And to remember that your customer success managers need to be people who are more than friendly and can learn a product. They have to be able to sell your business, and they have to be able to deliver educational support and value. So those aren't the easiest qualities to quantify, but trust your gut and look for awesome people who can do rad shit.
I also, to cut in, really love this comic because this relates not only to customer success, it also relates to how you sell your product, how you market your product. I mean, every single person on the team should be focusing on making the user this version of Mario versus this version of Mario, or selling the fireball flower. Like, the entire organization should work on that together. So I'm glad you included this one, just from the marketing nerd standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Wistia actually says something. They say, no one's ever a prospect to us. They're a customer from the beginning. So we care about our customers from before the sale, during the sale, all the way through the entire relationship. And I think that's just a great quality to look for is people who have that empathetic quality. And then the other, piece of it too, that I like to include is either subject matter or direct industry related experience. So if you're selling a marketing platform, if you have someone with a marketing background that's applying for a CSM job, they're worth looking at because they're going to be able to empathize really well with your customer's use case. So I would say don't be afraid to recruit outside of the specific job title you're looking for. And along with scaling your team, of course, comes the need for tools, right? So at different stages of growth, you're going to need different platforms to help you get started. You don't want to leave your colleagues hanging high and dry if you are out on vacation. So early stage tools are things we would consider. If you want to click through the next one, Salesforce is probably going to be your internal system of record. We recognize that most companies use that. Gmail, of course, for emailing clients. We recommend Trustfuel, not just because we work there, but because it's a really helpful tool for customer success teams that are getting stood up, that need an implementation time measured in weeks and minutes, not months, to manage and collaborate all of their information in one place. Of course, we recommend Calendly. It's a total lifesaver in terms of scheduling and managing meetings with our customers. It allows them to come directly to us when they need consultative services. Intercom, of course, for chat messaging and data acquisition as well. It may it may be one of my favorite tools for in-app chats and managing all types of customer communications. But if you don't have those resources, we always like to go to our friendly neighborhood engineer. This is Jaron. He's the lead engineer here at Trustfuel. So if you're not fortunate enough to have a customer success platform in place or a data mining platform, remember to go beg your engineers for that data because it really is important.
So big thanks to Jaren.
And then for enterprise teams, some of the tools are the same, some of them are different. Of course, we still recommend Calendly, Gmail, Salesforce, Intercom. Like those are the basics for managing customer success. I also recommend Zendesk. If you're an early stage company with a dedicated support desk, you could totally implement Zendesk as well. It's just not necessarily necessary until you have an established support team in place. And that is purely my opinion. I hope no one from Zendesk gets mad at me for saying that. That is a pure opinion.
Zendesk over here, so it's okay. It's okay.
I love Zendesk. I just, I don't typically recommend it for an early stage team. Which I would. And then for enterprise companies, if you've got over 40 CSMs, I would probably say you should check out Gainsight to Tango. If you've got an operations manager for your customer success team, someone who can handle an implementation and really get those processes in place that are going to help you automate. I haven't personally used either, but I know people who have and have said, wonderful things. So if you're an enterprise company looking at success tools, I think either of them would be a great option to check out. And yeah, those are, kind of what I think about how customer success teams, should begin setting about their process for scaling and growing. And I know I went over my time. I talked as fast as I could. But I think any questions or?
Kayla, no worries about going over time. We are slightly over time, so we have limited space for questions. But for anyone who does want to check in with us and get more info, I would highly recommend reaching out to Kayla first on Twitter, as she's going to be the expert. And then I'm also happy to take any questions as well. One great one that did come in earlier was from Jill. And Jill asked, how do you actually get or encourage your customers to complete NPS surveys? So like in Jill's case, they had done it recently, but they had a really low response level. So what, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I prep customers in advance, either via phone calls or via email, that we're going to be soliciting some feedback and we'd love to hear from them and give them a time frame for when they can expect it. And then we also make sure to close the feedback loop. And that's sort of a longer term strategy for getting NPS higher return rates. So when we do our thank you messages, we do, thanks for your feedback. And then the name of your customer success manager, like Kayla will be in touch soon. Mm-hmm. And then we just follow up, if they have comments that need to be addressed, we follow up with a call. If not, we follow up with just a personalized email saying, hey, thanks so much. We really appreciate you taking the time. Anything I can do for you while I'm here. And that gave us a greater return on our next batch of surveys, which we found really helpful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it makes it feel more like, as you said, the individual CSM is reaching out and asking those questions versus me being a customer and just getting that generic, like, we want to hear from you survey in the inbox that doesn't feel personal at all and it doesn't feel valuable at all. So
absolutely. Yeah. People want to share their opinions. They just need to be prodded a little.
So for anyone who wants to learn more about either of these platforms, websites are pretty standard, pretty straightforward. There's Calendly.com and then Trustfuel.com. And again, if you have anything else you want to check in with us or want to ask us, you can reach us on Twitter. I would especially recommend going to Kayla. Because one more question is coming in, can I throw an additional one your way, Kayla? Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So Victoria wants to know, apart from low health score, according to your experience, what are some other red flags for possible churn? Do you have any thoughts?
That's a great question. So one of my favorite ones to check for churn risks, and this can kind of be encompassed in your gut check, or it may be, is taking a look at your calendar. How many calls have they rescheduled with you? How many calls have they just straight up missed and not even reached out to say, hey, I can't make it? That to me is a pretty powerful indicator that they're not seeing value in their interactions. Another thing to look at over the longer term would be early on. So I know a lot of people advocate for those first 90 days. So if you're coming up on a renewal, say in the next 3 to 6 months, and you think this could be a churn risk, go back and look at how their first 90 days went. Were there issues? Was it difficult to set up their implementation? Did they require extra time or extra support? Were they unhappy at the time? Anything like that, I think those are two great indicators for potential churn risks. Other than that, I mean, ask, are you happy? Do you feel like you're getting value out of the product? And don't be afraid to start that conversation early. I think having an open and honest conversation can be a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, especially when it comes to contracts, because not everyone wants to talk money as a CSM. That's not the reason a lot of people got into the field. But you don't necessarily have to talk money. But I would be very open and say, do you still feel like Trustfuel is the right fit for you if you're getting the sense that they're halfway out the door?
Very cool. This has been super valuable. And again, for anyone who's wanting to know where they can access all this info, we will be sending an email tomorrow that has the recording and that has, as Kayla, I didn't even let you mention it earlier. Your team wrote up actually an ebook on all of this, so it's easier to digest as well. Isn't that right?
Oh yeah, we did. So that'll be going out in the email too.
Great. So you'll have text version, you'll have video version, everything you need. So thanks so much everyone for being here today. It's been awesome getting to walk through this with you. Anything else you need to know, reach out to us on Twitter or check us out at trustfuel.com and Calendly.com.